All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today, of course, is oh boy. All right, hold on just a sec. I kind of goofed up a tad here. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, um, today is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026, meaning it's hump day for this week. Um, So hopefully everybody's had a good week thus far. Of course, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So with that being said, of course, going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. Um, and we're coming up on 2 minutes here, so maybe in about another minute um, I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. As I said, hopefully everybody's having a good week as far as we get ready to get over the hump, as we're almost out of course, we're almost out of the first month of the year, January. Hopefully, for those who are in like the eastern and southern parts of the United States where they're getting hit with that winter storm. Hopefully, you guys are doing all right. You know, you're making it through. It's not causing too many problems for you. But anyways, so yeah, so now 2.5 minutes here. So I did, obviously I watched, some cartoons earlier today myself. Including Popeye a la mode, which is a particular cartoon you probably won't see too much of, and they won't. And there, again, another one of those situations where um, you had some stereotypical views on certain peoples that people would call prejudicial. So Popeye lands on an island of cannibals, and he is they're looking to eat him, and then of course he ends up eating his spinach and fending them off. So let's see. Okay, so now we're just past three. We're coming up on 3.5 minutes, so I might as well talk about what's on tap for tonight. Then, so tonight I got one article I'm going to go over from Bounding in the Comics. Um, So Jim Lee, the DC boss Jim Lee, uh, gave I guess an interview recently where he talked about in part that genre diversity gives manga a major advantage over Western comic. It's not just superhero stories. Even in the West, it wasn't always superhero stories because if you guys, of course, watch the Sunday shows, we've found that we had much more diversity back in the golden age where you not only had the superhero stories but you had crime noir, you had detective stories, you had sci-fi, you had westerns, you had adventure stories, you had all kinds of stuff um, that were very intriguing. You had wartime stories, aviation, you had all that humor. Even at one point, they even started doing romance comics too. So that was pretty fun, as you guys saw the other night on the This Day in Each History segment. Hey there, Ned Simmy. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, I see you. Friendly reminder, as always, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. And of course, with that, we also have, of course, as I said, the Jim Lee article tonight we're going to go over. Then we'll have the wrestling wrap up, look back to last night's NXT as they prepare for next week's now 7-way, and that's right, 7-way ladder match for the NXT title. I'll explain that when we go over what happened on last night's NXT. We'll look ahead to tonight's AEW Dynamite, and time permitting, we may even once again just review what to look forward to on Saturday's Royal Rumble. Let's see. So, aside from that, we of course, and then we'll finish off with this day in each history as well. So, now with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started then? Let me pull up the article that we're going to go over tonight here. Alrighty then, so here we go. DC boss Jim Lee says genre diversity. That genre diversity, not to be confused with identity diversity, gives manga major advantage, quote unquote, over Western comics. Quote, it's not just superhero stories, unquote. Article by Spencer Bakuli, published January 27, 2026, which is today, or yesterday rather. All right, so let's see what's going down here. Though many a discussion have been held in service of understanding the exact reasons behind recent readership surge in Japanese manga compared to Western comic books, DC President Jim Lee believes that this divide ultimately boils down to the simple fact that the rival medium far greater genre diversity than its superhero-centric counterpart. Well, that is true. You have many different mangas that cover a wide range of things. If anything, superheroes is a small part of it, with shows like One Punch Man and My Hero Academia. But you have actually more, like you have more historical type manga, like Peacemaker Kurogane. Let's see, Samurai Deeper Key. Well, that one's not quite as historic, but Story of Son Kiko. Let's see, Rurouni Kenshin. You have isekai type anime, where basically the idea of literally traveling to another world. You have harem animes. You have all kinds of stuff. So, Lee, who also serves as publisher's chief creative officer and is still, unsurprisingly, behind on his Batman Hush 2 work, offered his thoughts on the current East-West readership gap while speaking with Japanese news outlet X-Trend during a recent Tokyo Comic Con 2025. Per a machine translation of the interview provided by DeepL, asked by staff writer Kaori Maeda for his thoughts, quote, as a legend in the comic book world, unquote, on both Japanese manga overall and the reasons behind their surge in popularity, Lee recalled, quote, I'm quite old, in parentheses, laughs. So I remember the late 1980s when Japanese manga anime first came to the U.S., unquote. Yeah, with Dragon Ball and all that. Quote, I read Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira. It was translated and published by Marvel. I read it and then bought the Laserdisc. Then I also read Masamune's Shiro's Appleseed. It hadn't been translated, so I didn't really understand the story, but I loved the illustrations. Quote, in the 1990s, Tokyo Pop became a major presence, and as it declined, companies like Viz Media and Dark Horse began bringing manga and anime to the U.S. So I think it's cyclical, um, basically like a cycle, I guess. But speaking specifically about right now, in small quotes, I think Asian culture, pop culture as a whole, is booming. K-pop is part of it. Korean dramas are part of it. Japanese anime is part of it. Young people want to find something that's uniquely theirs. Unquote. From there, Lee turned his thoughts to the specific mediums themselves, asserting, quote, the stories told in Japanese manga and anime possess tremendous power. I often wonder myself what is missing from Western comics and why can't they achieve the same smaller quotes flavor. Quote, also, I think manga has an advantage over American comics. Most American comics are superhero stories. Sales and the majority of readers are concentrated there. Japan is closer to, in small quote unquote literature, something anyone can read, and it's not just hero stories. There are stories about cooking, soccer, a much wider range of genres. You can draw stories from that, which is true, and I did go over some of the examples. Let's see. And again, of course, another friendly reminder to you guys, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to um, feel free to comment or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. That goes for both my YouTube and my Rumble viewers. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on here. Quote, that's why I'm incredibly happy manga has achieved such success. Because it becomes a kind of goal, in smaller quotes, for me. The manga market is larger than our industry. So it becomes a question of, in smaller quotes here, what can we learn from this? On smaller quote. Quote, essentially, it's about, in smaller quotes, how do we access that? Unquote, or smaller quote. It's not just about art style, it involves a certain, in smaller quotes, sensibility. Stories that succeed in Japan are very different from those that succeed in the West. What can we learn from that? I think this is a discussion that will continue indefinitely. Make some good points here. That's definitely being shown here. I don't have the exact answer either. If we did, we'd already be achieving the same sales and readership. Laughs. Okay. Bringing his answer to a close, Lee made it a point to a note that a major factor contributing to Japan's recent popularity was the fact that, quote, in the West, comics and animation have long been seen as in small quotes, media for children, unquote. Quote, as people grow up, they move on to live action. But in Japan, it's different. Not only is the genre broad, but adults read manga and watch anime too. And if you watch like me, like metal, if you watch enough anime, you do get that the content does seem more mature than Granted, it's not to say they don't have their animes that aren't like geared more towards kids, like Pokemon, Digimon, that kind of thing. But a lot of their stuff, if anything, is geared more towards like older juvenile, like teens, young adults, and all that. When you see shows like Maison Koku or or some of the adaptations they've done for classic literature series like Anne of Green Gables or Moby Dick, or even when they put their own spin on world history, like in Le Chevalier d'Eon. So, quote, as people grow, oh, okay, yeah, we read that part. Let's see. As a culture, it's in smaller quotes, an art form, on smaller quote, not limited to a specific age group. I think this is also one reason why Japanese manga and anime have gained such popularity. And there we go. So that's the end of that article. Wow, 17. Let me at least see. Let me go through one more time here to see if I can find any other articles either here or other sites. Sometimes stuff comes up later than see if anything. Oh boy. Alright, nothing there. And of course, if not, I've got an idea what I'm do if I can't find anything here, anything new. You can party, join us, party, join us. Shake it, shake the day away. Let me see. No, that was not what I wanted to do there. Let's see now. All right, nothing new there. Oh. I know the day's far away, but will you be airing on Valentine's Day in February? Um, no, I won't. Only because that's on a Saturday, I believe, and I don't do Saturday shows. Saturday's kind of my off. Saturday's kind of more or less my off day. I mean, I may go on other people's shows, but I won't broadcast. I won't have a show on. That's usually the day I'm usually prepping for the week, so setting up the shows for the upcoming week. And the 14th, as you noted, Valentine's Day this year falls on a Saturday, so I probably won't be. Um, I won't. At least I won't be doing any broadcasting on my channel. There's always a chance always that 1 in a million chance I might like go on somebody else's channel, drop in to say hi, what have you, but um, I won't be probably doing anything for that aside from just prepping for the following week's show. Yes. Yeah, all right. Let me see now. Let me. Okay, so fair enough. Thanks for clarifying. No problem. Hey, Metal. Thanks for dropping in there. So one of the things I was, if I didn't have, if I couldn't find anything more to talk about, one of the other things I did think about talking a little bit about was Famous Studios adaptation. Famous Studios adaptation of the Little Lulu comic series. Little Lulu was a comic strip that was really made by an artist named Marge, and in the early to mid 40s, 1943 to 46, I believe, Famous Studios did a series of animated shorts for her. Just I guess I'll talk a little bit about those real quick here. Hmm. All right, so let me now that we have that already. All right, so this is going to be pretty quick. Famous Studios that, of course, they took over like the Popeye and Superman series from Fleischer in '42, and then of course started bringing about some of their other series like Novel Tunes. Novel Tunes, of course, gave us some of the earlier like Herman and Cat, Herman the Mouse and Casper the Friendly Ghost. Um, characters before they got their own separate series. But here we're going to talk a little bit about the Little Lulu short film series, because it did eventually, because of their situation with Little Lulu, it also ended up giving us Little Audrey. So here's kind of the thing about the Little Lulu adaptation from famous studios here. So between 1943 and 1948, so 48 on 46, Lulu appeared in 26 theatrical animated shorts produced by famous studios for Paramount Pictures, replacing the Superman shorts of the 40s. So the Fleischer and famous shorts that went from late 1942 to early 1943, or late 1941 to early 1943. Paramount went on to create a similar character, Little Audrey, after failing to renew the Lulu license and thereby avoiding the payment of royalty fees. As I understand it, they just didn't want to pay Margie, who was the creator of Little Lulu. They didn't want to pay her the royalty fees. Now, I've already watched a few of the Little Lulu cartoons. You may not see them. I think there's only one that gets shown on MeTV Tunes, and there's a particular reason for it. So there is this character, a black maid character named Mandy in the Little Lulu shorts, and she's fairly stereotypical, and she'd be a character that would probably raise a lot of eyebrows, as it were. That's why you probably don't see a lot of the Little Lulu shorts on TV anymore. Much like what they did with the Censored 11 at Warner Brothers and various similar cartoons that may have some, for lack of a better term, controversial content in them. With modern sensibilities taking into effect here. Lulu was voiced by Cecil Roy, who also would be, I think, one of the first voice actresses to voice Casper. I know Cecil Roy voiced Casper. I don't know if while Tubby was voiced by Arnold Stang. Arnold Stang, who would of course provide the voice of Top Cat later in for Hanna-Barbera, as well as providing the voice of Herman the Mouse in the Herman and Catnip series. Tubby, but I wonder who. Tubby, I guess, is one of Lulu's friends, I guess. The theme song for the shorts was written and composed by Buddy Kaye, Fred Weiss, and Zinni Lipman, and performed by the singing group Helen Carroll and the Slatispires. Musical arrangements were done by William Winston Sharples and Sammy Timberlake, who of course did all the musical arrangements for famous studios and all that. They did the Popeye stuff. So that's pretty much the short, brief situation with Little Lulu. And while we're at it, why don't we look at Little Audrey here, since learn a little bit about Little Audrey, who would replace Little. So Little Audrey, full name Audrey Smith, of course. Is a fictional animated cartoon character appearing in early 20th century comics, prior to starring in a series of Paramount Pictures famous studios cartoons from 1947 to 1958. She was devised after Paramount decided not to renew the license on Little Lulu, the comic strip character created by Marjorie Henderson Buell, aka Marge. Um, and Little Audrey was a very similar character to Little Lulu, kind of that precocious little girl type of character, right? And she had a nice little theme song to her short as well. Um, so of course she was voiced by Mae Quetzal throughout the late, the night from her during a run on, what would become known as Harvey Tunes, initially Novel Tunes, and then Harvey Tunes later. Um, let's find out a little bit more here. So, despite superficial similarities between the characters, the famous animators were at pains to design Audrey in contrast to Lulu. Yeah, well, yeah, they wanted, obviously they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to get busted for copyright infringement. So they had to find some way to differentiate Audrey from Lulu. I think they did, because I think Audrey might, at least again from my own perspective, I think Audrey might be slightly older than Lulu. Like Lulu strikes me as being like maybe 5 or 6. Maybe around, between 5 and 6 years of age. Whereas I think Audrey was maybe like 8 or 9, right? So that's just my perspective. My perspective. But anyways, as opposed to Buell's individualistic rendering of Lulu, the animators adopted an entirely different color scheme for Audrey, and employed the stylistic conventions common to famous studios' later 1940s repertoire. Yeah, well, Lulu had black hair, and had the red dress. Audrey had more like kind of like reddish auburn hair with a blue dress most of the time. Let's see. Veteran animator Bill Titla designed Little Audrey, reportedly inspired by his daughter Tammy. In parentheses, also his inspiration for Famous's version of Little Lulu, on which he worked, and for which he directed several shorts. On parentheses there. The original voice of Little Lulu was performed by actress Cecil Roy, in parentheses here, who was also the voice of Casper the Friendly Ghost, which I had mentioned. Little Audrey was voiced by Mae Quetzal, whose character voices included Betty Boop, Olive Oil from the Popeye cartoons, and most of Paramount's other major female cartoon characters. Yeah, it's kind of funny because Jackson Beck, Jack Mercer, and Mae Quetzal, along with Arnold Stang and Sid Raymond, were probably the 5 core voice actors at Paramount during this time. Arnold Stang, of course, who, as I said before, did Herman from Herman and Catnip. Sid Raymond, who, of course, provided the voice of Catnip as well as Baby Huey. And you could hear the two of them at times. And then, of course, earlier shorts, in some of the last black and white shorts of the Popeye series, the character Shorty. In fact, I think it was his very last appearance that Arnold Stang had provided the voice of Shorty in his one color appearance in the Popeye series. So, but those five, as I said, you know, Jackson Beck, Jack Mercer, May Quetzal, Sid Raymond, and Arnold Stang, I think, were the core voice acting crew for Paramount at that time. So let's see, the history of Little Audrey here. Prior to her adoption by Famous in 1947, Little Audrey had a long career in cartoons, but also in a series of mostly slapstick gags going as far back as the First World War. In cartoons and juvenile humor, according to B.A. Botkin's Treasure of American Folk Tales, Little Audrey is a cartoon character about whom the thousands of nonsensical short tales during the past 5 or 6. Okay. So she, I guess, had some. She did some cartoon before, maybe more silent type. Now, her animated cartoons. So, Audrey first appeared in the novel tune Santa's Surprise, 1947, where she was the most prominent member of a multicultural child cast, working to clean Santa's workshop while he was asleep, and was briefly seen in the January 1948 Popeye cartoon, Olive Oil for President. She did have a cameo in that one, but I think it's possible that a number of like famous studios characters had cameos in that one. Let's see. Her first appearance in her own series was the short Butterscotch and Soda, released on July 16, 1948. In common with many animated shorts of the period, childlike fantasy played an important role in Audrey's early cartoons. Yes, and I think that's one of the I think that is one of the magical things about a lot of the famous studio shorts of the time. Not just with the Little Audrey one, but even with Baby Huey, with Casper the Friendly Ghost, even with Herman and Catnip. You had some of those like more, well, maybe not as much Herman and Catnip, but definitely with Baby Huey and Casper Friendly Ghost, you did have that sense of innocence associated with those cartoons. Look, you get a scene there of Little Audrey in a scene from the Supreme Court in 1954. So, which often use dream sequences as the basis of storylines. In this way, Audrey could attend a wedding in Cakeland, Tarts and Flowers, 1950, ride the clouds with Mother Goose, and Goofy Goofy Gander, also 1950, or face an underwater tribunal of outraged catfish, the Supreme Court, 1954. Slapstick crept into the series with Surfboard, 1953, which was also a common thing for famous shorts at that time. Let's see. Which pitted the precocious Audrey against a hulking but ultimately brainless lifeguard. A total of 16 cartoons starring Audrey were produced for theatrical release, several of which were repackaged for television in the late 1950s. on. So yeah, from the late 19, yeah, they were initially part of like the Maddie's family, or Maddie's Funnies, Maddie's Funnies. I believe, and you also had, I don't know, she made an appearance. Some of her shorts ended up also as part of the cast, the Casper cartoon show in 1961 as well. Audrey was the only character in the series to have her own theme song with vocals. "Quote unquote," "Little Audrey Says." Yeah, that's a cute song, by the way, by Winston Sharples and Buddy Kaye. Some other characters and certain one-shots in the series had their own themes, but were entirely instrumental. Two novel tune spin-offs, Casper the Friendly Ghost and Herman and Catnip, had their own vocal themes, but only after leaving the series. Yeah, so when Casper got his own, I'm sure we've all heard Casper the Friendly Ghost, the friendliest ghost you know, right? For Little Audrey, the pre-October 1950 cartoons were sold in 1956 to television distributor UM&M TV Corporation, which was acquired by National Telefilm Associates the following year. After National Telefilm Film's failure to renew the copyright for the pre-October 1950 cartoons, they reverted to the public domain. The post-October 1950 cartoons would be sold to Harvey Comics when they acquired the rights to the character in 1959, which of course led to, again, to like where Casper, Audrey, Herman and Catnip, Baby Huey, all those characters became staples of the Harvey Comics line in the comic books as well. Today, they are property of DreamWorks Animation via DreamWorks Classics, a subsidiary of NBC Universal, distributed by Universal Television. Olive Oil for President became property of Warner Brothers via Turner Entertainment Company and distributed by Warner Brothers Television. Audrey is one of the three, later four, main characters in the DreamWorks Animation Television's animated series Harvey Street Kids, renamed Harvey Girls Forever in its second season. And I know we talked about that before because I remember, I don't know if it was with Metal or may have been with Metal when we were talking about it. You were not too keen on the Harvey Girls Forever adaptation, to say the least, if I recall. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But anyways, in its Little Audrey was modernized. Her classic outfit replaced by more contemporary clothing. She has brown hair in the series, more akin to the comics, as opposed to red hair as in the theatrical shorts. Unlike her comic book counterpart, Audrey is tomboyish and energetic. Well, she was energetic in her classic form too. So let's not get that. She was voiced by Stephanie LeMellon, who I believe did the voice of I'm trying to remember, Artemis in Young Justice. Some of her companions from the comic, like Melvin Weisenheimer, Tiny, and Lucretia, also appeared in Harvey Girls Forever. The famous Harvey, we'll read this part and then we'll be done with the Little Audrey profile here. Little Audrey's last name is Smith. She has reddish-brown hair. So the famous Harvey character, reddish-brown hair with ribbons styled in 3 pigtails, 2 low, 1 high. In parentheses there. She wears a little dress with puffed sleeves, white ankle socks, and black Mary Jane shoes. In the short subjects, her dress and ribbons are blue, but by the time of her Harvey comics runs, they are red. In Harvey Street Kids, she wears a pink shirt with jeans. The comic Cousin Susie's Dance Party, Little Audrey in Melvin, number 29, March 1967, reveals that Audrey has a cousin named Susie, who has a friend named Boo Boo, B-U-B-U. Well, I guess it's better than B-O-B-O, right? B-O, B-O. The first several issues of the comic book also reveals she has a brother nicknamed Patches. All right, so that's all we're gonna do on Little Lou and Little Audrey here. So now let's get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up. As soon as I clear this out of it here. There we go with that. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the show this far. Anyway, let me just look back to last night's. Start off by looking back to last night's NXT, as in preparation for next week's 7-way ladder match for the NXT title, which was vacated by Obafemi last month when he was promoted to the main roster on the SmackDown run. Now, initially, Jackson Drake, the current Evolve champion, and Joe Hendry were originally supposed to wrestle for a spot in the ladder match, but Joe Hendry was attacked backstage, and what ended up happening was Ava decided to put them both into the ladder match. She suspected that they had something to do with it, but they were both put in the. So you already have now 5 people involved in the now 7-man ladder match, in which you have Ricky Saint, Shiloh Hill, Sean Legacy, Joe Hendry, and Jackson Drake. So we'll find out the last 2 participants later on last night. So the show opened up with an NXT Tag Team title match, in which the Dark State duo of Osiris Griffin and Saquon Sugars, with Cutter James in the corner, retained over the team of Out of the Mud of Bronco Nemo and Lucian Bryce. And you had some more tag teams from the group from NXT come out, and you had the Culling attack Dark State after the match as well. Jada Parker defeated Nikita Lyons in 5 minutes and 20 seconds, furthering, and then had a bit of a verbal confrontation with Blake Monroe as that feud is continuing to build. In a qualifying match for that ladder match I mentioned earlier, one of two that will be on the line, Dion Lennox of Dark State defeated Miles Bourne, as in his weird sense of trying to help him. Ethan Page gave Miles Bourne the North American title to use against Dion Lennox, but he wasn't going to have it. He wasn't going to win the match that way, which led to a confrontation after the match, as Dion Lennox did defeat Miles Bourne in that match, and did lead to a confrontation between Bourne and page after the match. Lexus King defeated Tavion Heights in just under 4 minutes in a singles match. Thea Hall defeated Zarya in 9 minutes 15 seconds. And in the final qualifying match, that 7-man ladder match coming up, Keanu Carver defeated Andre Chase in just over 4 minutes. So now for the ladder match, for next week's ladder match, for the NXT title, you have Ricky Saint, Shiloh Hill, Sean Legacy, Joe Hendry, Jackson Drake, Dion Lennox, and Keanu Carver. They'll all be competing for the NXT title on next week's NXT. So now with that being done and said, now we'll go ahead and take a look ahead. See if we can look ahead to tonight's Dynamite. And by the way, last night's, of course, NXT took place at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. So tonight's Dynamite going live on TBS from the HEB Center at Cedar Park in Cedar Park, Texas. Matches already announced for the show include Don Callis family member Rocky Romero taking on Kenny Omega in a Continental title eliminator match, in which if the challenger can either survive the time limit or win the match, will earn a shot at the title. John Moxley looks to fend off the challenge of Ace Austin here from earning a shot at the Continental title. In a match for the AEW TNT title, Mark Briscoe will be defending against El Clone. In a match for the World Tag Team titles, so they have like 3 title matches tonight. As for the AEW World Tag Team titles, FTR of Dak Harwood and Cash Wheeler with Stokely in their corner will be fending off the challenge of Don Callis families Davis and Doyle of Mark Davis and Jake Doyle. Chris Statlander defends the AEW Women's World title against Tekla. And Andrade El Idolo will be taking on George Strickland. So tonight's Dynamite promises to be pretty big show tonight. Also, it's now been made official. Tommaso Ciampa is fully released from his WWE contract. They've moved him to the alumni page. He is now free to take bookings anywhere he wishes. So you could see him on the independent circuit soon, or maybe even show up in maybe AEW or TNA. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that all goes down. Anyways, with that being said, now we're going to move on from there. I'm going to check one more thing here real quick before. All right. So now with all that being said, now today, of course, is Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. So let's go ahead and take a look back at this date in Nietzsche history. History! So 86, 1, and 2021. All right. All right. So anyways, first off, I'm going to head back 40 years ago today. As on this date, 40 years ago today, back in 1986, the first issue of Betty's Diary from Archie Comics went on sale on this date back in 1986. Sold for 65 cents for 32 pages. Among the featured stories including, you have 4 Betty stories: The Art Lesson, My Secret Wish, Status Symbol, Saga, and the celebrity. I'm gonna need to go off camera here for a moment, so I'll be right back. But I'll put some music on while I'm gone. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's get this show finished up here. So, next up, of course, go ahead and clear this out here. Next up, we move ahead to the year 2001. On this date, 25 years ago today. WWE held its Royal Rumble event from the New Orleans Arena, New Orleans, Louisiana. Which, of course, saw in the event. On the Sunday Night Heat pre-show, the team of Lowdown of D'Lo Brown and Chaz, with Tiger Ali Singh in their corner, defeated the Kind Tai duo of Funaki and Taka Michinoku a tag team match for a spot for a Rumble match, which ultimately went to Drew Carey. Then in the event itself, we saw the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, the Edge and Christian, become the new WWE World Tag Team WWF World Tag Team Champions. In a match for the Intercontinental Champion, Chris Jericho defeated Chris Benoit in a ladder match. Irie retained the Women's Championship over Chyna, and Kurt Angle retained the WWF Championship over Triple H. Steve Austin won the Royal Rumble, last eliminating Kane at an hour, 1 minute, and 55 seconds. So now, as we move on to the final piece of niche history here, we move ahead to the year 2021, which was just 5 years ago today. So 5 years ago today, 5 years ago today, Vice Studios' Flea was released on this date back in, so Flea premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on this date back in 2021. It was, of course, Vice Studios among several other production companies. It was a multi-company, multi-language. So Flea is a 2021 independent adult animated documentary film directed by Jonas Kohar Rasmussen, an international co-production with Denmark, France, Norway, and Sweden. It follows the story of a man under the alias Amin Nawabi, Rasmussen's high school friend, who shares his hidden past of fleeing his home country of Afghanistan to Denmark for the first time. Riz Ahmed and Nikolai Koster Waldau serve as executive producers and serve as the English language dub version voices of Nawabi and Rasmussen. The world premiere of the film was at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival on January 28, 2021. All right, so there we go with that. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Be back here with more niche news tomorrow. And of course, I'll be joined by the Metal on Sunday. We will be doing, we'll be finishing up our coverage of July of 1940 with comics that went on sale on that day. We'll be going through, we'll probably be going through some books from Standard, Street Smith, and United Featured. Well, we'll technically only be going through one, Thrilling Comics number 8. We will kind of just touch upon like the first issue of Bill Barnes and the first and only issue of 1940s United Comics. But with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.